Hey guys, Scott here. Today I want to talk about Hillbilly and why did we nerf Hillbilly? This is something that people asked as soon as it actually happened, but I feel like people have just sort of just backed off on the topic, and Hillbilly has just sort of been forgotten. Hillbilly, how often do you see a Hillbilly now? He's one of the most lowest picked killers in the game based on the October stats. He actually is like tied with Pag for the lowest picked killer in the entire game. So pretty much no one's playing Hillbilly now. Now, to play devil's advocate with myself, there is some portion of that I actually don't mind, because a lot of people that played Hillbilly back in the day just relied on, like, carburetor tuning guide, primer bulb. They did Instasaw, they did Crackbilly, which was tuning guide and engravings. They used pretty damn strong add-ons. I think those add-ons were pretty strong, probably a bit too strong, and those kind of needed a little bit of a nerf. So they probably just only used Instasaw or ridiculously strong add-ons, and then once those got gutted, they were like suddenly, oh, I don't know how to play Hillbilly anymore, and they just stopped playing. So there's definitely some small portion of me, definitely a smaller part, is kind of okay that those people that don't actually know how to play normal Hillbilly aren't playing him anymore, because frankly, going against an Instasaw Billy, God, especially with Old Tinker, it was stupid. It was really dumb. It took very little actual skill. So I'm glad that portion of him is gone, but other than that, the main question I'm trying to ask is, why did they do it to begin with? What was the actual incentive for nerfing Hillbilly? And I can't figure it out. Even reading their official post, looking at their statistics, it makes no sense that they actually decided to nerf Hillbilly. The only thing that he needed to be nerfed for was his add-ons, I think. And only like 2 or 3 add-ons. Everything else was fine. So I'm trying to do some detective work here and find out what the hell the actual reasoning behind the nerf was. And usually, statistics, that's what they go off of. They look at statistics and they go, he's overperforming, based on statistics. And that's actually what they originally said in their post. They said that he was overperforming statistically. But the thing is, though, if you look at the actual statistics of all the ranks across all the games, I'm sorry, these icons are tiny even for me. This is a very small graph. But Hillbilly is right here. He is on the same level as Ghostface, Myers, Pig, Leatherface, Trapper. Like, his kill rate is not significantly higher. I mean, we should be nerfing Myers then and Pig, according to these statistics. So his kill rate was really just not that high overall. And I don't understand the reasoning for changing it if you're just going on kill rates, because they said he was overperforming, which means in his area, his kill rates were too high, if that's what the statistical statement means. But he wasn't. He's pretty much right in the average. On the red rank version of this chart, he was a bit higher, but as we all know, that's not what they balanced the game around. If that was true, then they wouldn't have changed, like Hex Ruin, for example, where new players couldn't hit great skill checks. We all know they do not balance this game for that, so I don't think those statistics are even meaningful, because they don't get to switch back and forth which side they balance for. That's just not how it works. So statistically, there's no real incentive for Hillbilly to be nerfed. And yet, I want you guys to just listen to this part again, because this is from the Hillbilly patch. And I'll just read this part and you'll see what I'm talking about. So, keeping with the theme of everything chainsaws, the Hillbilly is also receiving some changes this update. For the most part, we are happy the way the Hillbilly performs. His power is very versatile, allowing him to quickly traverse the map, zone out survivors, and instantly down them. From a survivor's perspective, there's also a reasonable amount of counterplay, leading to interesting chases where the best player often comes out on top. Yeah, that was old Hillbilly. He was great. He was one of the most fun killers to go against. He was actually pretty damn balanced. He was good. He was fair. Again, other than like Carburetor Tuning Guide, which I think was a bit too strong. But for the most part, yeah, this sounds like a glowing review for Hillbilly. I don't understand how they say this amazing review of the killer and then decide to change him. This is like the highest praise you can get. He's versatile play. He's got reasonable counterplay. Best survivor comes out on top. That sounds like a perfect killer. So even with their own notes, it doesn't make any sense that they decided to change this stuff. It doesn't make any sense. So given that we're already pretty happy with the way Hillbilly performs, again, they're already happy with it. The changes to his base kit are minimal. They ended up not being, though. We're not removing any of the options you have. Instead, we want to focus on the skill-based gameplay and put an emphasis on using your chainsaw effectively, only adding a small drawback to misusing your chainsaw. See, this also doesn't make any sense. The goal behind this change is to add a small drawback to misusing the chainsaw, add a bit more depth to the chainsaw with resource management. There was already a drawback to misusing the chainsaw. If you do a chainsaw sprint and you miss, you're in a cooldown. He doesn't have the vegetable oil like insane cooldown reduction add-ons anymore. So if he misses his chainsaw, you can actually get quite a bit of distance on him. Now it's Hillbilly, so you can't run to a new tile or anything like that, but you can reverse the side of the loop that you're on and be in a much better position where you're not going to get chainsaw. Just hop through a window, anything like that. Missing the chainsaw was a pretty, get away for a little while card there. And additionally, if they're talking about like feathering the chainsaw, because that's where the main overheating mechanic is when you're feathering it. So I guess they wanted to stop like back revving. When you're feathering the chainsaw, you're moving slower than the survivors. There is already a drawback because they're gaining distance on you the longer that you hold it. The only time it's ever actually useful is if they're trying to spin around you and not gaining distance. Because, I mean, well, in that scenario, who cares? It doesn't, nerfing or changing that doesn't do anything because you're still probably just going to hit them. So even there, it doesn't really make any sense because there's already a drawback to using the chainsaw. And really, the main point of all this, aside from the actual whether or not he's, for the record, I think people overblow how weak he is now. I actually still think he's an extremely good killer. It's just that there are very few actual good hillbillies, and most people just relied on add-ons to carry them through playing the killer, so they never actually knew how to play him. But the people that are still very good at Hillbilly are still very good with him. I still think he's one of the best killers in the game. But, so, I will say that I think people over-exaggerate how much he was nerfed, but I still want to emphasize the point again of why did they do it to begin with. There was statistically no reason to do it. The review that they gave of the killer indicated that they thought he did everything exactly as a killer should do. The general consensus was he was like he was like the prime example of a balanced, good but fair killer with actual counterplay. Hillbilly was like the perfect example of a killer being strong but still being able to be countered. And it brings us to like a question of like Trickster, for example, is an example of a killer who's weak, but his counterplay is just not interesting. It's just, you just run straight and put things in between you and hope his shit just doesn't hit you. It's just not interesting. With Hillbilly, you had to like perfectly gauge whether or not he was going to be able to flick around the corner and hit you in time, or are you going to make the window vault? Should you not actually go for the window and go around the corner instead? Should you just actually drop the pallet? Is he going to feather it and fake it at the pallet? Should you try getting a vacuum stun back into him to cancel his chainsaws? Like, there were so many interesting things that happened when a Hillbilly was chasing you compared to like new killers they make where it's just like, don't be seen by him, don't have line of sight. It's just, I don't know how you go from like that to like, and then Hillbilly having actual fun gameplay. I don't know. Again, I do think that, tuning guide, vegetable oil, the cooldown reductions and the charge speed add-ons were pretty stupid and those did need to be nerfed, but everything else about him didn't need to be nerfed. And I still think to this day, it's one of the strangest things that they've ever done because there is no reason for it. Statistically, actual gameplay, there's just, I don't know where this came from. If anyone knows, please let me know, because I'm Pepe Sylviaing over here. I don't know I don't know how this started, but that's it, guys. See ya.